For many people, being a whiskey maker is like a dream job. Let's try and find out what it's all actually about. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to another Thursday night vPub. Really excited to welcome you all here. We're going to continue that theme of speaking to people in the industry, speaking to whiskey makers. And I'm really excited tonight. In a few minutes' time, I'm going to be welcoming in the new master blender from Distell, responsible for Deanston, Bunnahabhain, Tobermory, and Ledaig. That's Julieann Fernandez. As I said in the intro there, for a lot of folk, being a whiskey maker, just really for a whiskey geek, let's say, seems like the dream job, doesn't it? And the more kind of whiskey people that I speak to that are directly responsible for blending, for quality control, for distilling even, they talk a lot about what their job actually involves. And it's much more hands-on and much more tricky and challenging that you sometimes imagine. I always just imagine like the PR pics where they're kind of in their labs and just have their noses in glasses all day long, just kind of whimsically making whiskey. So it's going to be interesting to talk to Julianne a wee bit today to talk about how she got there in that role, being responsible for all those well-loved brands, to talk about what her daily roles are and to get some opinions from her on whiskey and things, and talk about where things are going with those three very popular, I have to say, distilleries. But how are all of you? There's so much whiskey content out there. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of it. These are great times to be enjoying whiskey content. I know that we'd rather have a bit more freedom and things, but we're really being spoiled. The industry are really rallying to bring us content on every channel. I'm just very glad that you still come along and hang out here. It's wonderful to welcome so many of you as usual. Let's jump in and welcome some of you guys before I welcome in my guest this evening. Owen Ashford has just joined the Barflies. Thank you so much, Owen. It's nice to welcome you in, my friend. Hoyt is in. He's saying, hello, Roy. Good to see you, Hoyt. Always wonderful to welcome you in here. Jean Delacosine, Nick Keane down in New Zealand. Fantastic, Nick. Radek is here. You star. Good to see you, Radek. Daniel Vermaas. Melissa, Marcus Kreitner, Greg's Whiskey Guide, good to have you in, Greg. Multi-Haggis Muncher, Matthew, Multi-Mission, that's Menno. Finally done. Hello, Roy, glad I remembered to check. Got no notification for this. YouTube is a wee bit volatile. It's a wee bit fickle sometimes. Just make sure that you've clicked the bell icon as well. I'm sure you have. And you should get a notification. I put it out a wee bit earlier this time. And sometimes I think the sweet spot to put the video out is just a day or two before it goes out. If I put it out on a Monday or a Tuesday, sometimes it's a bit too early. It's almost like people might forget if they don't have the bell icon clicked or whatever. But I'm glad you're here now. I'm glad you came along. Pete Head is in. Good to see you, Frank. Wonderful to welcome you here. Luna Aaron is in. Jimmy Ledaig, you star. Good to see you, Jimmy. Got to hang out a wee bit with you on Tuesday night, and it was a pleasure. Rombout is here. Aye, Laddie. Rucher Lax in Germany. Russell Whiskey. Nick DV. Good to have you, Nick. Jimmy Jazz, you star. Great to see you, Jimmy. Neil Cochran as well. Neil, hopefully you've got that wee sample of the Bunnahabhain Burgundy. I'm going to try that for the first time tonight, hopefully. And if you've got that sample handy, and the other guys gave a sample too, which would have been Precarious Dave, Sevi. I'm not sure if I sent one out to Scott. But yes, I hope you've got those handy so you can sip along with us. Richard Agnew, good to have you, Richard. Rico Denert, you star. Tabitha Adams, Eric Cunliffe, Donald Rance, Skippy Van Pob. Good to have you back again, Skippy. Nice to see you, my friend. Whiskey Mystery, that's Phil and Deepa over on the west coast of the States. Wonderful to have you both. Mark, a Whiskey Bond, Edwin Engbers, Sillet Bang, so many of you. Scott, Kilted Moose is here tonight. Hello, Scott. Thinking about it, I'm not sure if you have that Bunnahabhain. Rolf Ebhead is saying, Aquavita, excited about tonight. Your whiskey personality vPubs are amongst the best content on YouTube. Rolf, comments like that, you can come along anytime, my friend. It's always brilliant to see you in the chat. Tabitha Adams is saying, how did you find the our whiskey tasting earlier? I had a disaster. I bought that our whiskey tasting maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I didn't realize fully that it was on a Thursday, which is the first crazy thing. And then I was immediately relieved that it was going to be early on the Thursday. And then I thought, well, I can't really enjoy those drams because I'm going to be welcoming in Julianne that night. So I kind of got a bit confused. But what happened tonight is that my wife ended up on an NHS webinar thing. So it meant that I could only stay in for the first kind of 25 minutes, half an hour, and then just come in and catch the tail. And that's exactly what I did. The whiskies go untouched. But it was the Game of Thrones whiskies in the end. I didn't know that when I bought it, and I've tried all of them. But what will be nice to do, I think, is go back and listen to the guests that Becky had on talking about the whiskies and sip through them one at a time. So I'll do that, and I'll feed back to you, Tabitha, what I thought about it. Be interesting to hear what your thoughts were as well. Did you stay for the duration? I think you did. I saw you in at the end. Raster is here. Great to see you, Raster. Cresamere is here. Daniel Gray. Graham Buchanan. Good evening, Roy from Aberdeen. Graham, you're very welcome. Nice to have you, my friend. Wonderful to have you all in. I know that you're here to listen to Julianne, and this is it's kind of a wonderful time for us because Julianne's admitted that she's back at work today. Today was her full day back at work, so she's going to be probably a wee bit tired. I'm not going to ask her to stay till the end tonight. But please stay till the end because the quiz will be very much themed on the content that we're going to discuss throughout this session. We're very lucky to have these people coming on, especially when it's so late at night. And to get that insight from the industry, to get that collaboration. And what you find is that the people that come on never ever make any demands. They're happy to talk about whatever we want to talk about. So I went out to my patrons and I said, give me some questions for Julianne, and I've got them here in front of me. But likewise, you bring your questions as well, and there's nothing off limits. Ask any question that you want. I tend to find the more I talk about whiskey, the more I discover there's not anything to actually hide. It's just sometimes difficult to explain certain things, legacy things, why certain things exist. And a lot of the producers that I'm able to share you with now are bringing some truly fantastic product, things that I am passionate about. You guys have been watching me for long enough to know that my task tonight is going to be to keep it in check and not go all fanboy when we start talking about some of the changes that's happened over the last decade or so at the distilleries that we're going to be discussing. I'm on record as being a fan of them all. I actively evangelize about the ones that I love. And I get the feedback from you that you're enjoying it as well. Zach Andrews bought me a dram and said, a quick happy birthday to Nathan Clark. Let's raise a wee glass to Nathan and say, many happy returns, my friend. I hope you're having a good one. Cheers. I hope you're younger than me. I did a wee kind of belated birthday hangout on Tuesday night with a lot of you, and it was an absolute pleasure. It was great fun. Looks like I've had another dram in from Royale 431. You're always very generous, my friend. Thank you. He said, evening Aquavita and Barflies. Looking forward to another knowledgeable guest setting off on a Distell flight with a Tobermory 12. Well, you and I both. This has been freshly delivered from the Good Spirits Company. It's a wee bit like phone and takeaway food right now. They're local to me, of course, but I've had a couple of 2 or 3 deliveries from them very recently. And yeah, you just click the button and, you know, the next afternoon, they're kind of delivering your whiskey to you. It's amazing. Anyway, I picked this up from Good Spirits Company. I have tried this a couple of times in the past, but it's kind of been in the noise of everything else at a festival or a tasting. This is the first time I've actually sat with it as I was getting ready for the stream tonight. I'm very familiar with the Tobermory 10 that this replaced. And I have to say that... well, I think what I'd like to do is use this to kind of, when I bring Julianne in, I'll start with a wee story and use this as a wee bit of an analogy to kind of start the discussion tonight, because I think it's interesting to me, very interesting. And it'd be interesting to get Julianne's input as well. Anyway, remember, if you're trying to get a hold of my attention, I just want to say to Peter Lee, hi, Peter, you're watching on Facebook. I know that there's a few of you over there watching on Facebook as well. It's very difficult for me to monitor all the chats. I am currently monitoring only the YouTube chat. I will try and pull up the chat so that I can pick up things from but it might be difficult. It's much easier for me to pick up the YouTube chat, but it's nice that you're watching, Peter, and I know you were excited and you're a big fan of Deanston. So Julieann Fernandez, I've met her a couple of times. I've been present in at least one of her tastings, and I was really quite chuffed when I worked out that she would be willing to come on a vPub and share what she does. And she's worked for the company since 2017. I'll let her talk a little bit about how she ended up there. But for me, she's now in a position where she's got a fair weight of responsibility on her shoulders, because a lot of us have come to really, really love the products coming out of Distell, what was once known as Burn Stewart. Ledaig, think about the Ledaig 10. It's just an instant hit. Tobermory is now switched from the 10 to the 12. Bunnahabhain, nobody needs to talk about Bunnahabhain. It's well loved. And kind of in recent years, Deanston is riding on a surge of excitement with lots of good, high integrity quality at reasonable prices, and lots of kind of cask experimentation and things as well. Kind of a bit of a shape shifter as a spirit, Deanston is. So it'd be nice to kind of talk about all of that and talk about the transformation. I'm going to reach out to Julianne and ask if she's ready. Give me a wee thumbs up, Julianne, if you're comfortable. She's looking like she is. And I'll bring Julianne in and introduce you to Julieann Fernandez. Hello, Julianne, and welcome to the vPub.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. It's nice to welcome you. Listen, I know I started to waffle on a wee bit there. I had to check myself because I want to start with a wee bit of a story. And I hope you'll forgive me because it might not strike you as being particularly complimentary at the outset. There was a time that I tried Deanston and I walked away and I thought I'd never go back. There was a time that I didn't really connect with Bunnahabhain. Out of all the Islay distilleries, I didn't really connect with Bunnahabhain. You might remember a time that the 12-year-old was a 40% product. It was much lighter and paler product than it is today. And the same for Tobermory. Ledaig, the only Ledaig I knew was a non-age statement, which was very, very peaty, very powerful, but it was a bit two-dimensional. That was going back about 10, 12 more years. Things it's almost incomparable. Some of the bottlings look vaguely similar, some of the branding looks vaguely similar, but the presentation, it seems like these whiskies have completely transformed in the last 10 to 15 years. And if I use this Tobermory as an example, the Tobermory 10 was probably the one that was still kind of a take it or leave it for me, let's say. It was quite subtle, very light and grassy, malty, very spirit driven, let's say. This 12 is a complete transformation. This is much fuller, much richer, much sweeter. All of these changes I'm talking about, would you agree? Would you say that that's happened within the Burn Stewart Distell stable? Or do you think that that's just my whiskey journey and I'm making it up?
No, not at all. I completely agree with what you're saying. Obviously, we'll probably talk a bit more about it in detail later, but a lot of this is down to us getting a better handle on our inventory, understanding our distilleries a little bit better. We have excellent distillery managers at all our sites now, and that really does help us just in terms of our new make spirit coming through, being a lot more consistent now. Our cask budget has improved. We have excellent relationships with our cask suppliers. So all of this sort of combined, it means that our products have improved. Like you say, stepping away from the chill filtered, going to the non-chill filtered. It's all just massive improvements, and it's been great for us and for all the brands.
I think we've seen it as well. Oops, I'm coming back now. I'm getting a wee bit of an echo, but it's maybe because I'm just a wee bit loud. We can feel that, we can sense that, we can taste that as well. But we'll get to that. I think throughout the discussion this evening, we're going to be covering things that have helped that become a thing, have put that in place. But let's ask about you. I mean, I asked you what you were qualified as, and you said that forensic sciences, right?
Yep.
How did you end up coming out of uni from forensics and ending up creating whiskies across 3 distilleries?
I actually feel a little bit bad saying it because I know there's so many people who, whiskey geeks as you call them, who love whiskey and who would love a job like mine, so I feel bad saying I sort of fell into it, but it did kind of happen that way, and I think sometimes that does happen with the whisky industry. So yeah, like you say, I was studying forensic science at uni. I studied up in Dundee, and between my third and fourth year, I think I sort of thought to myself, what am I going to do when I graduate? Getting a job in forensics is very difficult. I wasn't entirely sure if that's what I wanted to do. So I thought, why not take a year out and do a placement year, which is what I did. So I joined Chivas Brothers at Kilmalid down in Dumbarton. I worked in their lab there doing a lot of their sort of analytical chemistry, analysing a lot of their samples. But while I was there, I worked with a wonderful gentleman. He was my boss, Steve Hoyles, and he looked after a lot of their new product development stuff. So they were working on a product called Ballantine's Brazil. So it's a whiskey sort of flavoured lime and vanilla. And it was more to appeal to maybe younger people, females, because we are still in a bit of a time where whiskey's seen as maybe an older gentleman's drink. It is obviously changing, but that was a few years ago. So I worked on that with Steve Hoyles. And I think when I was doing that, I realised that I did have a passion for whiskey. So I went back to uni and finished my degree. And after that, I joined the Scotch Whisky Research Institute, where again, it was obviously whiskey based, but it was more analytical. It was in the labs. And as much as I did enjoy my time there, I knew that I wanted to get back into sort of proper whiskey making, as you would say, back into distilleries. That's where my passion was. And it just so happened that a job came up at Strathclyde Distillery in Glasgow, the grain distillery. And because I had so many contacts at Chivas Brothers, they got in touch and said, there's a job open if you like to apply, which is what I did. And yeah, I ended up at Strathclyde Distillery. So from there, obviously, I'm learning about grain distilling, which of course is so different from malt distilling. It's something that I hadn't even thought about before. It's something that when you're analysing the whiskey, I think you just sort of take it for granted that a lot of what you're looking at is malt, and you forget about the grain side of things. So working at Strathclyde taught me so much. I worked with so many amazing people there. But obviously being a grain distillery, it's running essentially 24/7. So it needs maintenance. So come summertime, what they do is they have their sort of silent season where they shut the distillery down for maintenance. And during that time, I was very fortunate. I was able to go up to Speyside and help out at some of the malt distilleries up there, which it's just a beautiful part of the country. Chivas Brothers have got so many beautiful distilleries up there, and that was just fantastic for me. That's where my real passion for whiskey came about, and it was working there that I realised that this is what I wanted to do. Chivas gave me so many opportunities to work in their distilleries, which was fantastic. But then from there, I thought, how do I progress? I knew I didn't want to stay in the lab. I couldn't really move to Speyside. I was based down here. So I thought, what do I do? Where is my next step? And that's when a position came up at Dalmuir, sort of just outside, technically in Glasgow. And it's their sort of vatting and blending plant. And I remember it was strange. When the job came up, I thought, I'm going to go for that. It's something really different. It will give me sort of more knowledge. And I spoke to one of the bosses at the time, and I said, this job came up and I'm thinking about applying for it. And he said to me, that's career suicide. If you do that, you're really going to struggle to come back from that. And I was shocked. And I thought, do you know what? Sometimes you need to take a risk. I need to build my knowledge. So I decided to take the job. And for anybody who knows what some of these sites are like, they're quite old-fashioned. It's like going back in time. And without speaking bad of anybody who works on that site, they're the nicest people I've ever met. It honestly was like one flew over the cuckoo nest when I walked in. I couldn't believe it. It was the most bizarre place ever. And it's all males. It was all males on site. There was one female who did some of the admin work. But other than that, it was just myself and all these men, just your typical sort of whiskey makers, people in the industry. One of them actually had to get a letter to say he had Tourette's because his language was so offensive. I think he was a wee bit worried for his job. But honestly, you could not meet a nicer bunch of people. They welcomed me. And a lot of people talk about the whiskey industry being dominated by males, which I don't think it is so much now. It was maybe in the past, but even these males that I've worked with, they've made me so welcome. They've taught me so much. And without working with these people, I wouldn't have got to the position that I'm in just now. They've helped sort of build my character and probably give me the confidence that I have, because I've had to stand on my own 2 feet and stand up to them sometimes. So no, it was absolutely great. And from there, the position came up with Distell, which I applied for, working with Kirsty McCallum. And at the time, I didn't even know if that's what I wanted to do. Chivas was obviously a huge company. Distell weren't quite so big, but it was an amazing opportunity. And I thought, you know what, let's just go for it and see what happens. And obviously, little did I know that it would lead on to this. So yeah, I joined Distell in 2017, and I've been there since. Kirsty left in October last year, just as I was going off on maternity leave, actually. So yeah, it was a funny time, but at the end of the day, I was invited to apply for the job the same way everybody else was. Obviously, they went external. I had my first interview the week before I finished up for maternity leave, and then my second interview 2 weeks after I had my little boy. So it was a fair process. I was given the same interviews that every other candidate got. And obviously, I'm very, very fortunate that the company had enough sort of trust and faith in me to give me the position of master blender. I'm sure obviously a lot of your viewers are thinking, gosh, she's quite young, or whatever it may be. I am young to be in this position, but it's a position that I absolutely love. And yeah, I'm really grateful to be here.
Well, the first thing I need to say is congratulations. Well done in landing the job.
Thank you.
But as Royale 431 has said in Whisky, passion is surely at least 9/10 of the job. And I think he's probably right. And I think that when you talk there's a couple of things that you touched on that I wasn't thinking would be an angle tonight. But we can mark it, we can talk about it and mention it. That is your youth, and the fact that you're one of the many growing. There's a swell of women coming in as whiskey makers now. I mean, there's some been doing it a long time. Rachel Barry, Stephanie McLeod. I'm thinking of there's a young Glaswegian girl just joined up at Grant's to work under David Stewart, Kelsey McKechnie or something her name is. And right across whiskey, we're seeing more and more women coming in. And while I am now officially this month, I've become one of those kind of older men that enjoy whiskies. I've been enjoying it for a long time, and I'm very, very keen to continue what I think is happening anyway, that younger people are starting to enjoy a more quality experience when it comes to taking alcohol, whether it's a nice quality gin, whether it's a craft beer, whatever. They want to know what's in the glass much, much more. And when I say young people, I'm not speaking about men or women, girls or boys. I'm talking about people. And I think that we're seeing that now. That I would like to think that we're in a place that the only people that imagine whiskies as an old man's drink are probably close to being old men themselves now, perhaps.
Correct.
That's really what I hope. Because I think that maybe I needed to be 35 years old before I got into whiskey. That's when it happened. Maybe my palate needed to be there. But I always feel a little bit sad that I never connected with it earlier than that. I kind of felt like, you know, it would have been nicer to, why have I spent all these years not connecting with whiskey? It's an amazing thing. So let's put some times on that. When you graduated, when you went back, you did your degree to now, how many years is that? It's quite a fast track, is it not?
Yeah, it's quite so I've got about 7 years experience in the industry, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't seem like an awful lot. It's fascinating. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You said that sometimes, I think the word you used is that you just fell into it, but it's maybe serendipity is a huge part of so many things in whiskey. It certainly is. But congratulations on the job. I'm very glad that you're there. I'm very glad that overlap has been there. You've worked with Kirsty in the role. You've worked with the team there. Stephen Woodcock is still very much the distiller there. He's the distiller across, I think, all the distilleries, Stephen Woodcock, yeah? Yeah, so Stephen's our master distiller, yeah. So he oversees the 3 distilleries, but we have one distillery manager, Elaine McAdam, for Deanston and Tobermory, and we've got Andrew Brown at Bunnahabhain, who's been there for many years, as you know.
Yes. Excellent. So you've kind of got, it's not like you've just kind of been, you're steady and steering this big ship by yourself. the team is still very much in place all around you. So your role, and that's kind of what I think everybody's more interested in. And Luna Aaron's would ask Julianne if her background in forensics gives her a more scientific approach to whiskey. Yeah, what is your role? Is there anything that you learned in forensics that you can bring into it? And what is the kind of daily, if we go through kind of the daily tasks, then we talk about the formation of a core ranges across the distillery, and then take it from there. What does Julieann Fernandez's daily tasks look like?
Yeah, so definitely studying forensics, obviously you start to approach things a little bit differently. You think about things a wee bit more methodically, and it gives you the sort of analytical skills that you do need. Obviously, when you're putting blends together, things are made up of small percentages. A couple of percent can completely change a blend. And it's little things like that I definitely think forensics has helped sort of contribute to my skill set. So yeah, in terms of my day-to-day job, I think a lot of people do look at whiskey making and blending as being quite a sort of glamorous role. And of course it does have that aspect, but you do have your day-to-day work as well, which can be varied. So typically on a day, we'll have tankers coming in from our sites to our bottling site in East Kilbride. So it's as simple as setting up our tanker samples and nosing them to make sure that they're of an acceptable standard. So that sort of goes along with maintaining our core range. Obviously, our new make spirit as well. Our new make spirit samples are sent to East Kilbride from each of our distilleries, and they obviously need to be set up and assessed just to make sure that our new make spirit is consistent. If it isn't, it's obviously working with the distilleries and trying to rectify any issues that we're seeing grading our new make spirit, so that obviously in years to come we know what we're sitting with. So keeping on top of that can be quite sort of monotonous. It's quite mundane. It's not the most exciting of jobs, but obviously if you don't look after quality just now, in 12 years you're going to regret it. So it is all part and parcel of what I have to do. We've got a lot of bulk customers as well, so it could be that they've sent in a sample that they want us to try and match. So it's looking at the inventory, seeing what we can make up for them and what our inventory will support. There is a lot of inventory management as well, which goes along with my job role. And again, to me, that's not really the fun side of the job. It can be quite boring, making sure we've got enough stock allocated for the next 5 years to make obviously our forecasted volumes. See what we've got left over after we've made our core range to turn into limited editions. Things like that. So my days are very varied, which
can we put some scale on this? Let's imagine that you go in on a typical day and it's going to be a day that you're going to be nosing lots and lots of samples. How many samples could we be talking about? Let's take it from one extreme to the other. How many are we talking?
So one extreme to another. Some days I'll go into East Kilbride and the only samples I'll nose are maybe the tanker samples that come in. So you're maybe talking 5 a day. But when I'm working on something, so for example, grain, just now I'm doing a project with some of our grain spirit. So I've been going to our site in Airdrie where we mature quite a lot of our grain. And when I nose there, you're talking, what I usually do is I just go around with one of the guys from Airdrie and just sample straight from the cask. And when you're doing that, you can be talking 100 samples easily.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite intense, and obviously we like to nose and taste all of our samples because there is some things that you pick up on the palate more than what you do on the nose. So yeah, when you're nosing and tasting, especially grain whiskey, as many samples as that, it can be hard.
I think what you're talking and now what you've talked about there is grain whiskey, but if you apply that to all the distilleries and the changes that I've talked about in the malt, much more of that happening, I think, is probably one of the foundations or the foundation stones to the transformation that we've touched upon already. When you talk about cask management, quality control, knowing what your inventory is, knowing what's there. I know that there's a story that I can recall, and I won't mention the distillery. It may or may not be one of yours, but they talked about a purchase order coming in for casks, and they would literally fulfill it by the nearest casks to the door that fit the profile of the purchase order. They would literally just roll the casks and say, there's your whiskey. Now, this is a long time ago. This is not anything recently, but that was maybe something that existed, that it was just selling cask, selling whiskey, without really anybody taking careful care over what was inside the cask. Do you think that could have happened in the past?
Definitely, yeah. I would say that it's only really been recently that we've started to get a good handle on what stocks we have, what they're getting used for, really beginning to plan ahead and making sure we've got sort of forecasted volumes and we know exactly where we're sitting. Before, obviously, you know what it's like in the whisky industry. People do trade, people buy and sell different casks. And there was a lot of that going on. And I know when people were trying to put some blends together, the casks that they were expecting to be there weren't there. So it happens all the time, but it's something that as a company, we've definitely got more of a handle on now, which is a good place to be in.
I have to say, I'm looking at Simon H's question. He's saying, this is what struck me when you talked about 100 samples, because the subtleties and changes between cask to cask are going to be very small. And he's asking, how does Julianne keep her nose and palate fit during a big nosing day? Is there tips? Or are you just at the stage that you can manage that throughout a day and you can?
It's a bit of both. So it's making sure that you do get rest. When I know I'm going to have days like that, I sort of tailor what I eat and drink to that as well. So typically on days that I'm going to be nosing and tasting a lot of samples, obviously it's not ideal if I'm eating a curry for my lunch and drinking 10 cups of coffee during the day. So when I've got days like that, I tend to, my lunch will be a lot more bland than it usually is. Cream crackers and oatcakes after a good few samples, just to try and cleanse your palate a little bit. Water, we're very big on drinking water as well, but SWRI did a study on sort of cleansing your palate between samples, so you need to make sure the water's sort of at the right temperature as well. It's little things like that that people don't realise makes too much of a difference, but when you're going through that many samples, it does. But you do get used to it as well.
Yeah, it's like anything. I suppose you're constantly becoming better and more honed. The ability to pick out what you need to pick out gets better and better with time as well. That's fascinating to me, and I realise I've been doing it wrong all of this time because I love curries. I can't stay away from a curry if it's offered. And yeah, dark strong coffee is one of my foibles as well. That's interesting. Kevin Grant, Whisky saying, does Julianne need an understudy? I'll happily learn from her and get involved in the industry. So Kevin Grant works at the Scottish Gantry. He works at the Scottish Gantry up in Stirling. And he's coming to Whisky. He's my younger cousin. He's coming to Whisky a bit earlier than I did. And he's absolutely super passionate about it. Simon Ray's saying, can you ask Julianne what's particularly exciting in her whisky at the moment and going forward? Well, I think that the questions that I've been gathering touch on all of those things, about the exciting things, about your favorite things, all of those kind of topics. But you've kind of given us an overview of the kind of mundane side of the role, if you like. That feeds into this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maintaining a solid, consistent core range that's going to meet the expectations, let's say, of the people who have come to love it, that have kind of invested in it and have come to really enjoy it. Do you feel there must be a weight of responsibility with that? Do you feel any pressure?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, our core products are absolutely fantastic. We're sitting at a point now, like you've highlighted with the Tobermory 12-year-old, where we've come a long way from the 10-year-old. The 12-year-old is now a fantastic dram. Like you've said, Bunnahabhain, already the name speaks for itself. We've got so many loyal fans. Deanston has come such a long way as well. So knowing that we've now got a sort of fan base behind us, people are recognising that we're doing good things with each of the brands. So obviously trying to maintain that, it does put a bit of pressure on me. But like you say, we have such a fantastic team as well. We've brought people into the business who have so much knowledge. Like I say, the people at the distillery now, I think we're in a much better place. They understand the process a lot more. They're now nosing their own new make spirits so that they know themselves if there's anything sort of starting to drift. they raise any concerns that they have. So we've made so many improvements recently as well, and that obviously makes my job that little bit easier when I've got an amazing team that can help support me.
I have to say, I've found that as well. I love touring Bunnahabhain. I'm yet to make it to Tobermory. I will get over there one day. There was a time that I felt like Deanston was almost, I was there so often because it was local to me. It was very easy to meet people there, and I would often take a tour with them and things. And I got to know quite a few of the guides and things there. And that comes across, Julianne. The people that are there also feel that same sense of pride in what they do. They feel a little bit privileged and a wee bit fortunate to be doing their job oftentimes, or certainly that's how it comes across. The passion comes across as well. And it makes, I think when you get that, when you pick up on that, it makes the experience, the visitor experience, so much better as well, because it's not just what they say about the whiskey, but the way they say it makes it quite compelling. Yeah, that's interesting as well. So I've got to ask you, there's a question that if I don't ask you, I'm going to be punished. Bunnahabhain, I used to have a 12-year-old and it lasted far too long in my cabinet, but it was at 40% ABV, you might remember. The Tobermory 10s were 40% as well. And in fact, I can remember, I'm going back to about 2007, 2008, I think, a 40% Deanston 12. Could that be right? That's just me going from memory. That. That's not the case now.
No.
I have a feeling that the personnel changes that you've had over the years that kind of started to change in the early 2000s, that spirit has become mature now. For a number of years it's been mature, and now we're starting to experience the fruits of lots of wholesale changes that were put in place. But one of the changes I want to ask about is the presentation of the products. You've made changes to production, you're managing your stocks much better as well, and then you've finally got a product that you decide to release at 46.3% ABV and write words like unchill filtered. I've got a wee Bunnahabhain over my shoulder here as well. If I pick up the bottle of Bunnahabhain, actually it's here, sorry. If I pick up this, it says on it unchill filter, it says natural colour actually here. Are these things important to you? Because this is core range we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, massively important. So obviously I do a lot of master classes as part of my job as well, and what I like to talk about is the fact that when I'm tasting a lot of the whiskies that are going into our core range, I am tasting them straight from the cask. So I'm getting the beautiful mouth coating, all the oils that are naturally present in it. And obviously it's delicious, it's packed full of flavour. Why would you want to strip that from your product? I don't think there's any need to do it at all. When we're obviously doing our tastings and we're looking at the whiskey in the glass, the colour that we get naturally from our product, because we are using such good casks, the colour is just beautiful. We don't need to add anything to it. We've not got anything to hide at all. So there's no need for us to add caramel to our product. Not stripping those oils out just makes the product so much richer. It really coats your mouth and gives you a beautiful mouthfeel. I obviously am very fortunate that I get to taste it straight from the cask, which will be that little bit stronger than 46.3. But giving you it at 46.3, keeping all the oils in it, means that you're appreciating it exactly how I'm appreciating it. It's not really fair if I get to taste it and then I'm stripping everything out of it and saying, here you go, have it like that. It's much better for everybody. And I just feel as well, keeping the strength that little bit higher, it means that you can drink it how you want. There obviously has been quite a bit of kind of whiskey snobbery in the past where people say, oh, you can't add water or you can only drink it with ice or whatever it is. Personally, I don't really care how you drink your whiskey. If you choose to have Iron Brew in it, Coca-Cola, whatever it is, I honestly don't mind as long as you're enjoying it. But having it at these higher strengths mean that it holds its own. You know, you're going to know when you've got Bunnahabhain in there or if you've got Deanston in there. Taking it down to the 40%, sometimes I think you can lose it far too easily if you want to mix it or if you want to add a bit of water. And I want people to always be able to enjoy it. So yeah, that's massively important for me.
I'm looking at Daniel Vermaas's comment here. I'm not going to read it out, but I hear what you're saying, Daniel, and I know that you mean that very, very complimentary. Wonderful. Lots of people are enjoying what you're saying. And I think we're not surprised. I don't think we're surprised because, as I've already mentioned, we feel it. We taste it in the products. And it's not because we sat down and listened to a presentation about these things. It's because we were recommended by people who we trust. It's because we came across these whiskies and they were powerful enough and engaging prospects to stop us, to make us pause and think about them in a way that we hadn't before. So this is a real thing. When you talk about putting it out there at 46% ABV and above, and it does mean that you don't need to filter that product. You're firmly changing your focus, aren't you? You're moving away from mass market products where you've got to meet a price point, perhaps, where you've got to meet a market expectation where they're looking just for easy to drink rather than being very full on and flavoursome. You're swinging to more towards a kind of, I always, when I talk about whiskey geeks, I'm very much referring to myself. I don't mean any offence by that ever, but maybe people that are much more enthusiastic in their consumption of whiskey. That's a deliberate thing that you guys have done. And I think, would that be because you realised that you had to build a brand for yourselves?
Yeah, that's it. Obviously, we had to build a brand. I think it's a mixture of things as well. If you're going for a certain price point, that's fine when it's sort of mass produced, if you want to call it that. Whereas obviously you've been to our distilleries. We're not huge distilleries. We're not making hundreds of million litres every year. It is still small, quite small, sort of almost craft. And I think because of that, we want to keep that sort of elegance of that there. We don't want to just sort of add water, reduce it to 40 and try and get as much as we can out of it. That's not what it's about for us. We want to try and keep it as sort of premium as what we feel it should be.
Interesting. And I think, we always worry a wee bit because if you're putting the whiskey out there at 46.3% as well, there's more whiskey in the bottle. Does that make sense? I mean, it's versus, if you put it out at 40%, then there's more demineralized water in the bottle and less whiskey. But for the most part, for the core range, you've managed to keep the pricing where we can still engage with it. I mean, your core range entry level 12-year-olds are typically about the £40 mark, let's say. Your 15-year-olds where they've existed in the past. I'm thinking about Tobermory, that's gone now. 50-year-old organic, again, still affordable, 60, 65, 70 pounds. 18-year-olds, 10 or so pounds more than that. These are affordable. You're standing on the same level playing field with your peers who've got similar presentation and things like that. Do you see yourself in a position where that's going to change? Whiskey's getting more expensive year by year. Is there a pressure on any of your production to push the pricing, or are you at a stage that the pricing is right?
I think we're at a stage where our pricing's right. We're attracting the right people. People are trying, because our pricing's right, people are starting to try more of our products. And because of that, we are getting more of a sort of fan base. Our products are becoming more popular. We don't need to increase the prices just now. Obviously, a lot of this goes back to, obviously you've got inflation and things like that. But again, it does go back to the relationships that you have with suppliers. Your price is only going to go up if the likes of your malt, your casks, etc., things like that all start to go up. But like I say, a lot of that does come down to relationships with your suppliers. So you're talking about Deanston, for example, a lot of it's going into bourbon casks. We've been using the same cooperage for years. So the cask price, there's not going to be much fluctuation with that. So I don't think there's any need for us to start ramping up prices. I think we're quite settled where we are. We're doing well. Like you say, we do launch some limited editions and stuff as well that sometimes come out at higher price points. But in terms of core and where we're sitting just now, I don't see any change to that happening.
I might take the opportunity to pick you up on that a wee bit later in the stream, if you don't mind. Once we get to talk, there's a couple of whiskies here that I do want to try, and I know that we've both. This is the bottle that was bought for me by the Nottingham Whisky guys. I noticed that Simon Ray was in tonight. Maybe Fraser, Billy, Richard, Tom, all the other guys. I know I'm going to forget some of them that bought me this. I was blown away. I tried to get this, but I missed it. It sold out. But I also noticed the price, so we'll get onto that a wee bit as well. But what's in your glass just now, Julianne? Have you got anything on the go at the minute?
Yes, this is actually an Auchentoshan American oak.
All right, okay. And is this that's a surprise? That is a surprise because of Auchentoshan American oak. we're talking about an on-age statement, 40% ABV. Is that a kind of switch-off thing for you? What is?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of a few things. So firstly, I live in Bishopton, so not far from Glasgow Airport. So Auchentoshan really is my most local distillery.
Yep.
It's a distillery that I've probably driven by the most. It was one of the first distilleries that I visited. So because of that, it's a distillery that I love, and I'll always be supportive of it. Although I've obviously never worked there or anything, it's still a distillery that means a lot to me. Like you say, it's a bit of a switch off. A lot of the times when I'm working with whiskies, what I'm nosing the most is if it's not core range, it's limited editions to see how they're maturing. We're obviously using so many different cask types. We're using a lot of kind of heavily sherried casks and things like that. And sometimes it's nice to just strip that back and get back to whiskey how it is. The Auchentoshan American Oak, it's light, it's fruity, there's a lot of sort of coconut in there, and I just find it really refreshing. It's a lovely dram just to sip and enjoy, and just sort of switch off and unwind a little bit.
That's super interesting. That is interesting. And I know, I mean, I don't do your job, of course, but sometimes when you've been having lots and lots of really bold whiskies from really active casks all the time, and you just kind of want to just, you know, throw some soda water on something light and refreshing, I think, just to have a wee kind of switch off. So I get where you're coming from, but that is quite a surprise. And I think if I was to take any observations from that, Julianne, I would say that, yeah, you're pointing towards an enthusiast for your own products and things. You know that that's the market that you have to target. That's what you're going to build your brand on. But that's not in any way to snub the legacy of Scotch whisky of at 40% that it's been for 100 years or more, that you're still, I mean, if that's what you have in your glass.
No,
yeah, that's super interesting. But we are going to be in a wee while. We'll be going and hitting up, I think, one of those much more active cask special editions that we're talking about, I hope. Donner Pass Whiskey is shouting at me saying, can you please ask about the differences between Bunnahabhain 12 black box gold trim and current black tube version? Seems maybe less older whiskey in there. Do you have depth of stock challenges and things? I suppose that whiskey is going to naturally be forced to change over time. And you're talking about the quality control and trying to keep things consistent. Is there times that that's just out of reach? Tim seems to think that there are two kind of differently packaged Bunnahabhain 12s there that he's picking up quite a difference in. Any comments on that?
No, I know the ones that he's talking about, and there's not a difference in the liquid at all. We do find that a lot, and this is not what I'm saying is the case here, but whenever we change our packaging, that's when we'll start to see the kind of odd customer complaint coming in. And it's people just naturally think sometimes when we change the packaging that we've changed the liquid. It's not at all the case. The liquid has stayed exactly the same, and to be honest, since we've went to the new packaging, that's all tied in with when we've got better casks, a better handle on our inventory. Stock management's been a lot better. So to be honest, the most recent stock's probably our best stock. So no, shouldn't be a difference though.
What do I have? Is this the most recent packaging here?
Yeah, that's the newer packaging.
That's the newer packaging. Okay. Well, I'll get a wee try of that. In fact, I might try it just now while I ask another question from Christopher Malloy. Now, I don't know if you've got anything to do with Black Bottle, Julianne. Does that fall under your responsibility?
Yes, so Black Bottle and Scottish Leader are both mine as well.
Scottish Leader, okay, that's a pretty huge brand, isn't it, in terms of a blend? Why, Chris Malloy is saying, thanks for your dram, Chris. He's saying, why was Black Bottle reformulated from a peated to unpeated blend? Any chance it'll ever go back? Thanks. That was an ownership thing, was it not?
I think a lot of it was to do with, ownership, casks, transfer, things like that. So Black Bottle, it is still peated. It's got a small percentage of peat in it, so it's almost got a sort of smoky tail that just comes through at the back. It's not obviously completely peated. We do have some exciting things lined up for Black Bottle. Our brand manager for Black Bottle has sort of started this new initiative without giving too much away, and what we're going to do is really look at Black Bottle.
Nobody watches, just share.
No, we're going to really look at Black Bottle. We've got sort of four good ideas in the pipeline that I think we're going to go with. So soon you're going to see some new black bottle releases. So yeah, definitely keep your eye out, because I know what you're saying about the peat, and there could be something coming that you'll appreciate.
I remember, and I'm going back a number of years, I remember somebody telling me, if you're going to drink whiskey, son, drink black bottle. And it stuck with me, that, and I think that it was probably because of maybe the peaty, heavier element, but I think that it was always considered to be one of those malts that had a slightly higher malt, one of those whiskies that had a slightly higher malt content. I don't know if that's still the case, but from what you're saying with the plans going forward, does it sound like it's something that Chris Malloy could maybe look forward to?
Definitely. There's going to be some nice black bottles coming out, hopefully in the near future. So yeah, you'll definitely enjoy that. Whisky
Games, Matt is saying, great to hear straight from the maker. Absolutely love it. Okay, I've got a wee question here from Precarious Dave. He says that his question would simply be, has Julianne been responsible? What has Julianne been responsible that we can taste? So I don't know if he's speaking about, I guess you're responsible for pretty much everything now, but the supply chain, it takes a wee while for it to get out to us. Is there any kind of recent additions that's fully been your creation that we can kind of say, okay, this is a Julieann Fernandez production here?
So yeah, like you say, it does take a little while for it to get out. A lot of the stuff that I'm starting to lay down now, obviously you're not going to see coming out for the next sort of year or two. The limited editions that we're launching this year, we've got a lot of really nice ones coming up. And essentially, because we are quite a small company, it was only Kirsty and myself when Kirsty was in the business. And it meant that because we were a team of two, we worked on everything together. It was easier for us both, obviously, to do it together. You know yourself, when you're nosing a whiskey, you'll get something that somebody else doesn't get. And that's why we liked to, when we were doing tasting notes, we both had samples, we both nosed and tasted, did our tasting notes together, and then sort of compared and kind of added them together to build the final set of tasting notes. So a lot of the stuff that you're going to see coming out, especially this year's limited editions, a lot of the tasting notes will be mine. But in terms of actual cask finishes, I have today actually just purchased some very exciting casks. So you'll start to see that all of this coming through, and I think you will start to see some changes. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing will maybe be a little bit different from what we've done in the past.
Can you put a name to the casks? Are you willing to share what kind of casks you bought?
There's some different wines in there from different regions. Some Hungarian wine, some wine from Croatia, things like this that I'm going to start trialing. I want to try and come away a little bit from some of the sherry stuff.
I have to say, I've just taken a sip of this Bunnahabhain 12, and I'm obviously sipping it on the back of the Tobermory. I forgot how sherried this was.
Yep.
And having this in contrast with the Tobermory, I mean, it'd be nice to go back to an older packaging release, but then you're comparing something that's been in glass for 5 or 6 years. I don't know, it can change a wee bit, but it'd be nice to go back and compare. But I have to say that this is tasting very, very nice tonight. This is soft and rich. I often wondered about Bunnahabhain, the standard 12. Is there any peat in it at all? Sometimes it's almost like there's a wee bit of peat going on in a Bunnahabhain 12, but I see you shake your head there. There's none.
No, none at all. Sometimes I get a little bit of wood smoke coming through, and maybe that can be a little bit.
I'm not getting it tonight. Like I'm not getting any smoke off it tonight, but I can sometimes stick my nose in something really peaty and not pick up smoke. I think it's just a problem of maybe a product of drinking too much peated whiskey, honestly. But I was just wondering if there was ever any peat smoke in Bunnahabhain.
No, none at all.
Unless it's like a Moynia or a Stoisha or something.
Yep.
I'm really glad I opened that Bunnahabhain 12. It's been sat there for a wee while. Okay, let's. So there's going to be some things coming out in the near future that we can try. That's certainly that's going to be a Julianne creation, right? And he's asking as well, as most of there's a couple of questions in the chat actually came up along the same theme. Is most of the maturation of Distell distilleries now in East Kilbride, or are they maturing plenty on the islands, etc.?
No, so everything for our core range and our single malts, for Bunnahabhain, for example, gets matured on the island. We're obviously very big on when you're tasting your Bunnahabhain, sometimes you do get that sort of brine influence that comes through, that little bit of saltiness, and it's because it's matured on the island. We've got no plans at all to change that. We don't currently mature anything at East Kilbride. We do have a new warehousing site opening at East Kilbride, but that will be the stock from Airdrie that's transferred over there. The stock in Airdrie is mainly sort of grains and malts that we're using for blends, but we also keep our experimental casks there just because it's so handy for us. As much as we would love our experimental casks to be on Bunnahabhain, some of them are, but we like to check our experimental casks maybe every 3 months, because if you're using a new cask, you don't know how much it's going to take on, how long the finishing time is going to be. So just for easiness, what we usually do is, if it's a Bunnahabhain, for example, it will mature for the first 15 years or whatever on the island, and then we bring it over and we finish it at our site in Airdrie, just so that it's close by, so that we can keep an eye on it.
And I suppose when you're doing that finishing, when you're doing that kind of recast thing, you're often going into something that's super active and going to be really influential in the spirit. So maybe that's why you want to keep it close on hand. You want to just be really careful and monitor that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if we put more than one brand into a cask. So we've done it before where we've bought casks and filled some with Deanston and some with Bunnahabhain. And even the difference, the interaction between the Bunnahabhain in the casks and the Deanston in the casks, with Deanston being that little bit lighter, it takes it on so much quicker. So obviously your finishing times are going to vary for each of the different brands. So yeah, we really need to keep it close by so we can keep an eye on it.
I spoke to you about this when we met in person. I know you probably won't remember it, but I spoke about how I believed that Deanston was such a shapeshifter of a whiskey that it was able to I mean, obviously you're being very careful about the stuff that you release for me to try. Maybe you've got experience with Deanston where it didn't work so well in a certain cask, but I'm always amazed that I have Deanston from a stout cask, I enjoy it. I have Deanston from a rich Oloroso cask and I enjoy it. A relatively light, I mean, maybe your organic is one of the purest ways to enjoy Deanston, maybe actually because of the casking. I love it. I love the 15-year-old organic. Challenging things like the Palo Cortado casks, which to me there's lots and lots of rich sweetness in it, but there's always a savoury side to that Palo Cortado Deanston as well. Anything that the Deanston went into just seemed to blossom in. And I think that must be tempting for you to release bunches and bunches and bunches of different expressions then. Do you find that, or is it just because I'm getting the good stuff? Is that my perception?
No, not at all.
Anthony's bought me a dram saying, I love the quality of Distell products, but why would you drink Auchentoshan American oak with access to such fine drams? Just some tongue-in-cheek. I'm sure Anthony understands exactly that you're having a wee drink rather than an analysis, Julianne. Sorry, I was interrupting you as I was asking about all your creative Deanstons.
Yeah, I think the thing with Deanston is, for me, when I look at if you look at the sort of 3 or 4 brands, the Deanston, Tobermory, Ledaig and Bunnahabhain, Deanston to me is almost our experimental whiskey, and I don't mean that in a bad way, that we can put it in whatever we want and try what we want, but it's such a light spirit, it is so versatile, and yeah, it does seem that whatever cask we put it in, it does seem to work. We've tried it in casks before where we've thought this hasn't worked at all, and you know, a drop of water has changed it completely. So you'll notice with a lot of our releases, sometimes the strengths are sort of up and down and a little bit all over the place, and people must wonder, why is that? So a lot of them, they are cask strength, but if it doesn't say cask strength, it's because it's what we call nominated strength, and it's been where we've drawn the sample from the cask, and we've just gradually added a little bit of water until we think we've sort of hit the sweet spot where we're getting all the flavours coming out, and that's when they will then check the strength of it, and that's the strength it goes at. Whereas if we'd given you it, just say for talking sake, if we gave you it 57%, you would think, not sure about this, I don't think this has worked. But as soon as you've added that little bit of water, it's just opened it up and changed it so much.
That's super, super interesting. And I think that the phrase cask strength is not legislation. So that's you taking an integrity decision there. That's you taking an honest step, because you could add water and still call it cask strength. Is that correct?
I don't know. It's not something that we've ever done. We obviously like to make sure that everything we do is very honest and by the book. So if our releases say cask strength, it's because it is cask strength. Other strengths
so that's
will be
interesting to look
nominated.
out for this. So this Palo Cortado, the 12-year-old Deanston Palo Cortado here, actually says unchill filtered and finished in Palo Cortado casks, but it says cask strength. It's written here.
Yeah,
so this has had no water to adjust. You felt that this was at its best straight from the cask.
Correct.
That's super interesting, Julianne. That is fascinating. Mark Burns is asking, what's Julianne's sweet spot for whiskey? So in terms of kind of profile, and let's throw age in the mix as well. We've been talking a lot about Scotch's sweet spot. So what would be if we had to ask you to generalize a wee bit and give us a sweet spot in terms of profile and style and age? What would you answer?
I think for me, I don't think age is as important to me when it comes to the whiskey, only because obviously I've tasted things that have been 4 and 5 years old that have been just as good as whiskies at 18 and 19 years old. But in terms of what I like, I quite like the sort of sweeter things, like your Sauterne finish, that sort of nice sweetness coming through at the back. But what I'm massive on is that your cask always has to complement, not mask. So I've tasted some finishes before where whether it's a sherry or a wine, that's sort of all you get and you lose the whiskey. Yes, I like my whiskey to be whiskey with something complementing it. So I like something like Sauterne where you get a little bit of sweetness coming through at the back.
Yes, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Sometimes there's people that I enjoy whiskey with and they clearly love the sherry whiskey so much that you just feel like pouring a glass of sherry for them. You know, it's just obviously the things that they're really connecting with is the sherry. I get exactly what you're talking about. I love it when the spirit is still bold enough to have a voice and the cask has only kind of helped that voice. I know exactly what you mean. It's interesting because there's got to be lots of releases out there that you have that are from a time before all of these changes were put in place. Have you been able to kind of pick out older casks and hang on to older casks before all these production changes went into place, before all of this quality control went into place? So if we see an older example of Deanston, that's obviously before the current kind of, let's say, legacy had a hand in it. I'm thinking about there was a release a couple of years back, the 23-year-old Oloroso. So that's going back to the 90s, isn't it?
Yep.
And the Decennery that you brought out, that would have been a marriage of all of those things.
Yep.
I guess the stuff that you've got now from that time, are you just hanging on to the best? Is that what's happening?
Well, what we're doing actually a massive piece of work just now. We have a lot of Bunnahabhain from the 70s in our inventory that we kind of almost don't know what to do with. So we're starting a piece of work where we are sampling a lot of our old casks that we have sitting in the warehouses, and we're trying to put a plan together of what are we going to do with it, because we do have some beautiful whiskey. It might be that it needs a couple of months in a specially made cask just to finish it for a little while. It might be that it's good to go on its own, but we are doing some work just to see what we have and what can be used. So
and
some of the older whiskey is still fantastic.
We are talking about Bunnahabhain that was laid down in the 70s. And the idea of that ever becoming a single malt was never a consideration. Is that right? That was always produced to be part of a component for a blend.
Yep, that's right. But the thing with Bunnahabhain is, even going back years ago, the distillery itself hasn't actually changed in terms of the still shape, everything like that. It's obviously such an old traditional distillery. So it might not have been exactly the same, but the new make spirit back then probably wouldn't have been all that different to the new make spirit we are seeing now. And the good thing about that is the new make spirit produced at Bunnahabhain is fantastic. So no matter what cask you put it in, even if it's just a refill cask, it is going to mature into something that's excellent. And just obviously depending how it's matured, it might take a couple of months just to finish off in something, but there's definitely something that we can do with it. So even if there's older whiskey that wasn't really laid down for single malts, it's something that we can definitely make work.
Vicky Thompson, I think Vicky's over in Edinburgh. She's saying if Julianne needs somewhere for that 1970s, you have my address. So if you're looking for somebody to help you sample those casks, yeah, fantastic. I'll grab another couple of these questions, Julianne, before we move on to I guess the part of your job that does get you excited. And I can tell, as you've started to talk about some of these things, we know what that's obviously going to be. Julianne is asking, with all the creativity seen in the craft beer industry, I'm wondering if any of the various malt recipes have or can translate to whiskey development. That might be a question maybe more for Stephen, or is that something you can answer? Are you curious about playing with barley? Are you curious about playing with yeasts or any kind of that kind of stuff? Is that tricky for you because of trying to maintain that consistency?
No, it's definitely something that we look at. Obviously, we are quite a small team. Stephen and I work very closely together, and I do with the other distillery managers. So in terms of that, I do help support the distilleries. And when we do pieces of work like this, it's something that I'm heavily involved in. There is always changes in malt sheaths, things like that. Especially we've got Swery who do a lot of these trials, and they're feeding back results. Like certain yeasts will give you more of the estery compounds. We obviously are in a good place with our new make spirit just now, but that doesn't mean that we can't trial some other stuff. So what we do is we do say, if we're going to do any trials, we make sure that it's at a set time. The whiskey's obviously marked that it's been for a trial, and we do segregate it on our system. Just if it's too different, then obviously we don't want to use it for our core range, but it can obviously be used in some of our experimental stuff. So no, it's definitely something that we're looking at.
That's interesting. That is interesting. I know that you've got the infrastructure in place to handle those kind of runs because you're doing an organic product right now, and you've been doing that organic product for a number of years. You've been distilling organic since 2000, right? So in order to manage that, you have to have that infrastructure in place. So that means different barley strains, different yeast strains. Can we get excited about something like that in the future, maybe? Or
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can definitely, as Stephen Woodcock says, play tunes on in our distilleries. So we can change different things and see where we get to. But obviously, key for us is even when we are changing these things, like the malt and the yeast, we don't really want you to see that in the final product. Typically, when we change anything like that, it's more for us to get our extracts and our yields and stuff up. We're doing it obviously more from a cost side of things rather than being experimental. We're not really doing it for flavour. We obviously want our Deanston to be consistent when it comes off the end of that spirit still.
Yeah. I have to say, I can understand you not wanting to... I mean, Deanston for me, it's got everything. It's got the kind of spice. It's got the nice pepper notes and things. It's got and it's... I know that a lot of that's helped by just that extra ABV kind of exaggerates that as well. But there's a mouthfeel, there's a creamy maltiness to Deanston as well, that the only thing I would ever want to do with that spirit is just enhance that without breaking it. So I can understand that it must be kind of tricky for you. You know, we're making a good spirit, it's been well received. But I mean, it's nice to hear that there's room for experimentation, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Era McFault, my friend Era, he's over in Belgium. He's saying, apart from peat level in the malted barley, he's talking about Tobermory. Are there any other differences between the production of Tobermory and Ledaig?
Nope, nothing at all. So obviously, like you say, the peat level and when we're distilling it, the cut points changed a little bit. So we cut it a little bit later just to get some of the last phenolic compounds over.
Okay.
But
so
everything else is the same.
So peated barley versus unpeated barley, and then just a slightly longer cut.
Yep.
That's interesting as well. That's interesting. Good. So we get to the part where we ask you, Julianne, what's the fun part of your job? I know what the answer is here. What is it? What is, you know, you're doing the quality control, you're doing the mundane tasks, you're managing all of these things. It's almost like looking after, it's like being a teacher in charge of hundreds and hundreds of children, right? But then you've got this opportunity to do the fun side. What is the fun side of the job for you?
The fun side is definitely, there's a few different parts of it that are really fun. Purchasing different casks is always my favourite part, and starting to lay down stock and checking on that every few months to see where we get to. You never know if a certain cask type is going to work, if it's not going to work, how long that finishing time is going to be. So that's definitely one of my favourite parts. The other part is doing things like this, doing master classes. Obviously, we've got Fazed, which obviously isn't going ahead this year, but we're doing Fazed at home.
Yes.
Doing things like that is just so exciting because we have so many people who are so passionate about our brands as well, and it's so lovely to be able to talk to them about our whiskies, take them through our new releases, answer any questions that they have, and just sharing that passion and enthusiasm. So yeah, that's definitely a really fun bit of the job. But it's got to be the casks and the limited editions. As much as I love the core range, which I do, doing the limited editions it's just so fun. Writing the tasting notes, yeah, definitely my favourite part.
So this would qualify as one of those, right?
Yes, definitely.
I'll try it. This camera is not very good. It might focus on this. I'll do the best I can. But this is the 2005 Burgundy finish. It's a cask strength product. It's a limited release. I can actually see from the label. Oh wow, it is limited. It's only 600 bottles.
Yep.
When this was released, now this was gifted to me. I'm very, very grateful to have this from the boys at Nottingham Whisky Club. But when I looked at this, I smarted, Julianne. This was an expensive product. This was, I think, £135.
Yep.
And it's a 2005, fantastic. So it's 14 years old, yeah, 14.
Yep.
What causes up that product to have? I mean, I know that you're coming from a position where the opinion that we have of your products are, generally speaking, pretty good value. So then suddenly, I mean, I can't compare this to a 14-year-old Deanston, even at cask strength or whatever. But what makes this that price?
It is just the craft that goes into it. Obviously, like you say, it's only 600 bottles. We don't have a lot of this. The Burgundy casks that we used, they were quite expensive casks. It was finishing for about 3.5 years in the Burgundy casks. I think the strength of that is about 57.4. So it is high strength.
No, this one's 60.7.
Is it?
Over 60%, 60.7%, this one.
See, I don't get the fancy
I mean, there's plenty of
bottles
whiskey in the bottle. Yeah, that's right. Do you have this one?
Yeah, but I don't get the fancy bottles that you get. We get lovely lab samples to take home and do our tasting notes and stuff.
But it's the same stuff, right? It's the same.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Can I make a confession at the outset? And this isn't what I expect when I put my nose in it here. Like I say, this has been open for a while, but the only reason it's open is that some of the guys in the chat here have got a wee sample of this to sip along with us. I hope that you have, guys. I am not a huge fan of red wine cask maturation or finishing. When it's done well, it can be very good, but it's probably my least favourite style of whiskey, and I'm learning to change that because, like anything in whiskey, you invest in it and you start to understand it more and you start to enjoy it more, right? But this doesn't nose like I expected. This is a kind of richer, darker thing. This is it's actually nosing closer to sherry, I would say, than red wine.
Yep. Yeah, there's sort of some espresso and dark chocolate starting to come through there.
Coffee. Black coffee is absolutely there. It's very rich.
Really rich.
Black. I'm thinking of all of the black things, right? Black fruits, black cherries.
Yep.
Yep. Anyway, Julianne, cheers. Sláinte. That's an awfully good dram, isn't it?
For me, you still get the beautiful Bunnahabhain coming through, that your sort of typical roasted nuts. It's just so rich and elegant.
I think what's striking about it is on the nose, you've kind of got this idea that it's going to be quite a kind of dark, dreamy, seductive thing, and it is. But on the palate, maybe helped by that ABV, the texture, it's much brighter. It's much more alive and vibrant than you expected it was going to be. It's long finish. My God, it's still going.
Yeah, very long finish.
Who else is precarious? David's got this Sevies. If he's internet, I don't know if he's here. Neil Cochrane's got it. He's saying he's getting a bit of dunnage on the nose. That's interesting for a relatively speaking, quite a young whiskey. I'll keep an eye out for it's rich of the Bunny 25. He's saying, I don't know if he's comparing it to that. What's a good one? And would you recommend a wee bit of water in it? I mean, I don't feel like I need to reach for water.
That's
despite it being 60.7 yet.
Yeah, sometimes at the higher ABVs, people naturally want to add a little bit of water just to maybe stop that kind of alcohol burn that you get. But with this, it's just so smooth and elegant that there's no burn at all.
There is a wee winey note there. There is a wee tiny bit tannic.
Yep.
There's a nice dryness to it there as well. I mean, what kind of would this have been European oak or American oak? Do you know what kind of oak these casks would have been made from?
I think these are European oak.
Yeah, that's that kind of it plays like that kind of nice drying spice.
Yep.
Thanks so much to the boys at the Nottingham Whisky Club for gifting me this. It's an absolute peach. I need to send you boys down a dram if you don't have a wee bottle on the go yourselves. Julianne, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that. I mean, it is dear, £135. But what I think what I'm picking up from you is that, okay, Roy, if you're going to compare it to a 14 or a 15-year-old product, even at cask strength, it's going to play dear. It's going to look expensive. But we're only going to make 600 bottles of these and that's it gone.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's so little of it. There is only 600 bottles. We are conscious of price. The only complaints we've had, though, haven't been on price. It's about people not being able to actually get it. And I know that our team, they do question the price and the value all the time, and they do listen to our customers. We don't want to take anything for granted, but we've worked hard to get the whiskey where it is, and we think that the price reflects the quality that you're getting.
I have to say, I need to spend a bit more time with this one as well. This is another one that I found, I did take a bit of a pause with this one as well. And I had a bit of a whinge at you guys, but I have to be honest, you handled it very, very well. You reached out and you wanted to talk about it. You wanted to talk about this whiskey and you wanted to say, look, we are not launching a new core range product. This is not going to be the price of our core ranges going forward. We're not trying to elevate the prices across the board. This is a very, very special project. That's why it was chosen to be released to the union members, and that's why it's gone out at that price. It's been nurtured, it's been cared and crafted for. I think it was Peter said, Roy, let me send you a couple of samples. And I said, no, I'll tell you what I'll do instead. Based on your confidence in the product, I'll come and I'll buy a bottle. You know, I expected it to be about the 90 quid mark. It was 110. I came up and I bought a bottle of it. And I have to say, it's an absolutely beautiful whiskey.
Yeah.
This is very rich, dark PX. This is for somebody that's a sherry head, absolutely. It's very rich, very sweet, very syrupy version of Deanston, right? And I have to say, I get it. This is completely unique. Nothing like this exists in Deanston, unless maybe you do. I don't know if there are PX matured Deanstons in the pipeline or in the past. I've never owned one. So it's interesting to talk about that because it's happening all over the place. It's not just kind of special releases from let's say an incumbent or an established brand like yourselves. It's a new distilleries coming along or people with very small parcels of stock making a very special release. So we have to take that into account because there is the argument, and I've mentioned this before, that some people take it in the left hand and sell it with the right hand.
Yes.
And they take a gamble, they make money out of that gamble, and fair play to them if they want to go off and find that model works for them. They're maybe not a drinker. They're maybe not going to enjoy the whiskey, so they just see it as ways to make money, and they've become very good at it. But there is an argument that a proportion of that money should perhaps go to that new distillery, to that new startup business, or to that project that's very much experimental and needs to be, because at the end of the day, everybody that makes whiskey, as romantic as it is, they all remain a business. And for us to enjoy them going forward and for it to endure, they have to be making money.
Oh, aye, of course, yeah. It's obviously it's expensive to make whiskey as well, especially when you're making it on sort of remote locations. Bunnahabhain's not quite as bad because of how many distilleries are on the island. But if you look at Tobermory, for example, we're the only distillery on the island, so it's not as if we can share the costs of malt or anything else that's getting shipped onto the island. And that's why sometimes some things maybe are a little bit more expensive. But of course, I mean, we benchmark against others and we do try and remain great value. I've seen some single cask bottlings out there, even at 15-year-old, that are going for sort of £400. And of course, that's their prerogative. Everyone, each to their own, and that's absolutely fine. But we do try and keep the costs as low as we can, while at the same time making money, because essentially we are still a business and that's what we need to do.
Is this a single cask? Or just a couple of casks? Or?
No, a couple of casks.
Because I guess it's be a wine barrique or something, something a bit smaller than a butt, right?
Yeah.
I have to say, it leaves a lovely, lovely, vibrant kind of text sensation. It's almost effervescent on the finish. I have to say, it's a lovely dram. I'm grateful to have it. I wonder how Dave and Neil are getting on. Neil is here. Neil is saying Aquaviti wasn't sure about the price at first, but it is absolutely fine. Hope the Fèche Moynia Amontillado is as good. It sounds like Neil might have managed to bag himself one of those. I didn't. I missed. I didn't get any of the Fèche releases. Look at Eric's question. Eric, which Eric? Which Eric? There's loads of Erics in. Question for Julianne. Have you run across a barrel that turned funky while aging and went way off the normal notes each distillery has? And what would you do with that cask? It must happen fairly regularly.
Yeah, so we're quite fortunate. We don't see it happening very often with our malt. I don't know if that's because the casks that we're using are very good casks, and when we obviously have really good relationships, so we know exactly when the casks are going to arrive, and the guys are very good at getting them filled really quickly. We do have some grain though that's been filled into casks that I think have been lying outside without a bung in them for a little bit too long. So yeah, there's a few grain casks in our inventory that I'm trying to find and get rid of. So yeah, it does happen. It's not ideal, but it's a shame because one bad cask can ruin a full batch.
Sorry. Do you ever find that it gets so bad that you have to waste the whiskey, or do you tend to find that you can blend it out in such incremental quantities that it doesn't affect anything? Or what do you do when there's a cask that's just not behaving?
It depends what it is. Sometimes you get this sort of, it's almost like a sulphury, rotten vegetable note that starts to come through. Some people get sort of damp cardboard when the cask's been lying outside without a bung on it. When you have a note like that, one cask in a full batch it'll ruin it. So when we get casks like that, yeah, usually that whiskey just has to be written off. There's nothing we can do. We can't blend it away. There's some notes that you get that you can blend away, but no, in terms of like a sour cask, there's no way you can get rid of that.
Okay, just put it down to experience. And I think it was Billy Walker last week that talked about turning it to earth. He just said he sends it to earth. Excellent. So there's one more question I've got for you, Julianne, because this is something that just came on my desk this week, and that's a new release that's come out from Deanston. It takes us completely in an off-piste, a different direction completely from what we've been talking about tonight. But Triquetra and Jules said, it was great to find Deanston in my local supermarket. A NAS Kentucky cask matured, but disappointed to see it was at 40%. What was the reasons behind that decision? And will we see this in other supermarket chains? So that was and I'd heard about, I'd seen another couple of posts on social media, a kind of red label, a Kentucky cask at 40%. Yeah. What is that? Is that a kind of trying to cast your net, or?
So the reason for that is just to have a sort of lower price point, something that's a little bit more more accessible. So it comes in obviously under the virgin oak. It's still not chill filtered. It's what we call soft filtered. So it does go through a filter to try and remove some of the obviously unwanted, like the heavier fats, but it's not going to strip everything out of it. So we're still not chill filtering this product, although it's at 40%.
That's interesting. I've never heard soft filtered before.
Yep.
So is this, how much is that product out there? Do you know what the price is?
Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know. I know that we were doing a deal with Morrison's, and that's the first shelf that it's went on. It only went into supermarkets about 3 or 4 days ago.
So Jules and Stuart probably picked it up in a Morrison's, and absolutely, it doesn't take long for people to start chattering about it. I have to say that when we talk about enthusiasts versus a mass market product, one of the biggest barriers of entry we always talk about, to use Scott Adamson's phrase, actually, barriers of entry is ABV. And if you choose to put something out there at a natural ABV, 46.3, maybe to somebody with a less experienced palate, that's going to be quite spicy and hot to them. So would you say that, is that what you've been targeting there, a more easy access gateway type product, or was it a price point thing, or a bit of both?
I think it was a bit of both. Obviously, we're trying to get people into drinking whiskey, into knowing our brands. And I think sometimes maybe people looking at the higher ABV, they might be a little bit put off. They've maybe tried it neat and thought, oh, that's a little bit strong. They're not sure how to drink it. They've maybe heard in the past not to mix it. Whereas with the Deanston Kentucky, we're still using really good casks that are going in there. We've got some bourbon in there. We've got some new oak. So it is a quality product. And I think that way it'll almost be a way for us to start people on their whiskey journey. So if we can get people starting on something like Deanston Kentucky, and then they might start to try different whiskies that are in the brand and the portfolio, and hopefully it just kind of, it's more accessible for people. I think it's a nice way for them to start, and seeing it in your local Morrison's, maybe more people will sort of pick it up there.
I'm thinking of Tomatin, I'm thinking of Glenmorangie, I'm thinking of Glendronach, I'm thinking about the swathes of the Diageo product portfolio that all go out there 40, 43% lower ABV for that very purpose. Be interested to hear more about this, the concept of soft filtration. That's something that a geek such as me would be interested in. Ben Marnick is saying, I referred to my earlier question, soft filtered, so he's curious about that as well. Is it something you can elaborate on, or is that something that's kind of under the control of somebody else? Or
so basically, soft filtration, it's just, we're not bringing it down to a temperature where it's chilled before we're filtering it. So obviously, when you're chill filtering it, you're bringing it down low enough that all the kind of fatty acid esters clump together and you strip them out. When you're soft filtering it, you're only bringing it down to, I'm not sure the exact temperature, maybe something like 4 or 5 degrees. So it's not cold. You're not going to get all these oils clumping together. But what it will do, it will take out the sort of really heavy fatty acids that are in there. And it just means that your product's going to stay a lot clearer, but you'll still get the beautiful mouthfeel from the lighter oils that are in there.
I have to say, I love this, Julianne. I love being able to hear that, and I love being able to see why things are. The more that we talk about it, the more we explain why things exist and why they're here, the less suspicion and cynicism there is, I think, and the more people feel comfortable with understanding why things exist, just to kind of say these words, as I often say. So that's very interesting. It's a lot of people in the chat tonight, including me, I've heard that for the first time today, and I'm grateful to hear it from you. Marcus Kreitner, same question for Julianne, talking about ABV. What is the barrel entry ABV for Bunnahabhain usually? Drinking a signature vintage Bunnahabhain, so that's an independent bottler of a Bunna at 68.5%. I'm gonna guess that that's from a sherry cask, Marcus. I don't know. Typically, is your fill 63.5?
Yeah, 63.5 for all our distilleries.
Do you ever fill higher?
We did fill some higher, just to experiment and see if it would make a difference. We filled, so I think we did our Tobermory that we released last year, the Tobermory dry sack. It was filled at a higher ABV. We have done it before, but no, typically we're 63.5, and that's the way that it will stay.
Okay, understand. William Nambawan is saying if Deanston wants their drams to be enjoyed properly, don't have them put on supermarket shelves. Have their future customers look into your channel. Unfortunately, and I have to say, William, I'm one of them. I got into whiskey through ploughing those supermarket shelves for a number of years. It took me a while to have the confidence to walk into a whiskey specialist and talk whiskey. And I have to, we always have to kind of remember our own, everybody's journey is different, of course, but I think we always have to kind of look back on how we got into whiskey. And I remember my first ever bottle of whiskey, it was a Glengoyne 10-year-old, 40% ABV. And I remember the first glass I poured, I'd been at the distillery, I'd tasted it there, loved it. But when I got home and poured a glass, I remember thinking, wow, it's really hot, really spicy, and reaching for water. That was when it was at 40%. But I hear exactly what you're saying. Daniel Vermaas is saying, I got a lesson in whiskey tonight. That's coming from Daniel Vermaas. Fantastic, Daniel. And Marcus Kreitner is confirming that his signature vintage is a first fill sherry butt. Yes. Jimmy Legg is saying, why can't they just filter out the splinters and give it to me? Jimmy, that's exactly what this is. That's exactly what that is. It just, that would only go through a barrier filter, right? Nothing else.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, excellent. Julianne, this has been absolutely wonderful. I think I've covered, and I'm very aware that you have an infant in the house, a wee baby, and you're mindful of, and I remember those days. I remember trying to sleep when the baby slept and to catch up on the sleep that you don't get through the night and things like that. But I want to, I'm quite pleased with myself. I don't think I fanboyed too much. Can I tell you a funny story about meeting Kirsty last year? It was earlier this year, Kirsty McCallum. I'd never met her, and I always kind of felt like I didn't know, because I became so passionate about the products, Deanston, Bunnahabhain. I didn't know if I would kind of just do the professional polite thing and give her a wee handshake, or if I would see her and just go all fanboy and give her a big slobbery kiss. I can tell you when I met her earlier this year, it was a bit of both. I met her at the SMWS thing at the start of the year, just before the lockdown happened. And I hope that things are going really well for her in her new role as well. I have to say, to have you on here and to have you almost, your demeanor is almost nonchalant. It's almost like, yeah, you're comfortable, you've got this, you're excited about it. But it's also nice to hear you being so open and candid and to speak so passionately about it as well. I'm excited for all of the distilleries, Deanston, for Tobermory, for Bunnahabhain, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future. And I'm also pleased that you do feel a weight of responsibility on your shoulders as well, because there's a lot of people out there that have come to really, really love the products, and would be very, very happy if more of that continued, honestly. Julianne, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. I'm going to present to everybody a quiz now, loosely based on the subject matter tonight. It's an easy quiz tonight. Don't everybody rush off. But it's going to talk about the 3 distilleries that we've covered tonight. And it's going to talk about, yes, the history of them and how they've come to be and things like that. That's the kind of questions. So stay around if you'd like some of that as well. I hope that everybody kind of raises a wee glass just to say thanks to Julianne for spending her time with us tonight. And Julianne, if at all possible, if they leave questions for you in the comments underneath the video after, might you be able to get some time in the coming days to kind of drop in and pick out any choice questions? Or
yeah, of course, that's not a problem at all.
YouTube much at all. But there's going to be a lot of people that have shared questions with me here and in the chat tonight, and they're going to get perhaps not had a chance to have their question read out. Hoyt is saying, I feel like I attended a masterclass. Fantastic. Precarious David saying, you were speaking to me there too. Thanks to Julianne. Fantastic. Everyone is saying, candid and transparent earns our respect. Cheers to Julianne. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Royale is saying, please convey thanks to Julianne. My thanks. It's good to know my favourite family of malts is in good hands going forward. Slantia. Helen is saying, that's Hellswood, is saying, thanks to Julianne for another great session. And William is saying, many thanks to Julianne for her very interesting contribution. Lots of people are really happy, so there might be questions pop up in the video underneath. So just to say thanks to you, Julianne. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a wee thumbs up as always. And as you do that, remember to leave a question or anything. And if I can't answer it, I'll maybe try and get Julianne's attention to see if she can pick it up. Because I'm sure you've got hundreds of time on your hands. You're only the master blender for 4 brands over 3 distilleries and a new mum as well. I'm sure you've got millions of time to come in and answer questions on YouTube. But honestly, Julianne, thank you so much for taking time out of your very, very busy week to come.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Julianne, until the next time, Slanjava. I have to say, I'm enjoying this Burgundy cask. I think that's sold out now. I don't think you can buy that anymore. But that was wonderful. Wonderfully candid, wonderfully relaxed, open discussion to have. And honestly, a really, really busy person. She does have a baby at home. She started back a full day in the office today, and she was still able to come along and hang out with us until, wow, 20 past 11. I kept her even later than I suggested I might. But I'm very, very grateful to her, and I enjoyed hanging out with Julieann Fernandez tonight. I hope you guys did too. But I'm serious about leaving those questions. Please leave those questions there, because it just might be the case that she can pick up things that's interesting for her to answer. And as you can see, even the kind of more tricky questions, she's quite comfortable talking about as well. Eric Evans is saying, apologies for not touching on the C. Oh, that's okay. That's for touching on the C word. Will current hand sanitizer production affect future whiskey stocks? Will we see a price spike in the future due to it? It's an interesting thing in general. I think that we've got, I mean, how much hand sanitizer can you need? Would we go through more hand sanitizer than whiskey? I don't know. Because all the major distilleries, whether they're making grain, malt, gin, they're all switching to doing a higher strength alcohol for hand sanitizer products and things like that. But it is an interesting question, Eric. And Neil Cochrane is saying the water is warm. How true? Aye, it's a good community. And honestly, the more people that we can have like Julianne coming on and kind of sharing their stories with us, sharing their roles, sharing their jobs, the more knowledgeable we all come, and the more kind of empathy we have for whiskey makers, for producers, for people that are making the spirit, as well as the kind of people that are all kind of sitting around with us, just kind of consuming it with often not much insight of how the things are actually put together. I find it fascinating. I always find the time goes far too fast. I could easily have had Julianne hanging out here answering questions for another hour. But anyway, we've got a quiz to take care of. I don't have much housekeeping to talk about tonight because I haven't set anything up for next week. There was a bit of hole. Next week is Fisheel, and I got the calendar reminders popping through today. I hadn't switched them off. I was leaving for Fisheel this weekend. Lagavulin is on Saturday. Lagavulin Open Day. It was going to be on Saturday, and I was going to kick off a week of celebrations, and I was going to be there for the week this year. I was really excited about it. But I know that it's not cancelled. It's just kind of postponed, and we will get there. It'll happen. In the meantime, I'm going to obviously be here with you guys again on Sunday night. As long as you guys are enjoying that and getting fun out of it, I always say I'll keep bringing the extra sessions, the extended opening. But Thursday night next week, I'm still not sure what to do. I felt almost a wee bit sad celebrating Fisheel or doing an Islay flavoured thing. And also, it was only about 8 weeks ago that we did a kind of mini tour of Islay as well. So I'm still thinking about what to do for next week, but there will be a vPub on Thursday next week as well. It may be that I have a guest, but you know, I'm going to run out of folk to bring in quite quickly at this pace, right? But it's been wonderful, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. But there's nobody scheduled for next week. So unless something happens over the next few days, it might just be me bringing a theme to you like the good old days. So that might scare you away. That's okay if it does. But if it doesn't, I'll be here on Sunday, and I'll be here on Thursday next week in some form or other. Let's bring this quiz to you and remind you that it is, for the folk that are here for the first time tonight, this isn't a competitive quiz. There's no, well, it's competitive. Yes, it is. There's no prizes or anything. You're only playing against yourself. You keep your own score. You only share the score if you want to. Just, please try not to Google and things like that. Some of the questions are going to be tough, honestly, for Googling, but some are easy to Google. But it's just about hanging out and having a bit of fun. It's always multiple choice as well. It's called the quiz at the end, and I hope you enjoy it. See what some of these questions are saying. Whiskey Mystery Phil is saying, I just sat in silence for 2 hours. Wow. Fantastic. Simon H is saying, anti-Isla night, maybe a tour of the Lowlands. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to. I'm just trying to think of a way to pitch it, something to come up with. We are a poor substitute to Isla. Actually, you'd be surprised, but given the alternative, you're an amazing substitute to Isla, honestly. Bring back Roddy. That's a good idea. I mean, Roddy would have to dial in remotely, of course. We still can't hang out together, but yeah, somebody like a Roddy might be a nice, relaxed fit, actually. The struggle is real, Aquavite. We would be leaving 4 weeks from yesterday to come to Scotland for 2 weeks. I'm so disappointed, but we'll get back ASAP. That's Leanne, Scotch in the Bayou. Leanne, I'm hoping to welcome you in on a vPub to play a wee game of Is It a Speyside soon. Let us know when that's going to suit you. I know you're coming in with Zach, Mark, and Ben, and I'm looking forward to that. It'd be brilliant to have you in. Obviously, I didn't play Is It a Speyside tonight, but I will play a wee game when we've got a bit more space on Sunday. Maybe, Leanne, you're available for Sunday night. Let me know. Invite Ralphie or Roddy. They're both awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've reached out to Ralphie to kind of make sure that he knows it's on his terms. And when he's in the mood to do something, I think his internet connection is really ropey where he is as well, honestly, to dial in remotely. It might be that I can never do anything with Ralphie again until we're able to get in the same space, wherever that may be together. But I've kind of left it with Ralphie. And I think for him, it's definitely going to be something for him to choose to do when he's in the mood to do it. But he knows he's always welcome here. He would be welcome by all of us, honestly. Skogsmard is saying, have Rex Williams for the Whiskey Tribe, please. Have him bring his goofiest mooch mood. And that might be fun, something like that, a bit of an anti kind of a kind of bit of fun and hilarity and things when everybody's feeling sad that the festival season has pretty much been scrapped on us. Jimmy Legg is saying, I miss Doc tonight. I'm not actually sure where Doc is. I hadn't even realised that he wasn't in tonight. Doc is always a stalwart and a steady guy in the chat, but I'm sure he's doing absolutely fine and he'll be back soon enough. Pierre Cruff, that looks like a new name, Pierre. Good to have you in. What about talking about whiskey clubs? That's a good idea. It's certainly an easy topic to talk about. Our whiskey club, the Glasgow Whiskey Club, is putting together its first virtual whiskey event on Saturday this weekend. I'm excited to see how that's going to go. That's going to be great fun. I've missed that whole thing. I've missed that twice a month, going out and hanging out with the guys in Glasgow at the Whiskey Club. I'm missing people. I think you guys probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And Ruka Lax is saying, do it pre-recorded. Ralphie is worth a watch, even if it's not live. Aye, absolutely. Absolutely. And Eric Evanson is saying, or have one of your moderators on. I would love to learn about the vPub members. That was kind of the point of the Is It a Speyside game, that we could put faces to names and things like that and connect up people with their nicknames. Okay, good luck for the quiz. Multiple choice, I always say. And we'll roll into question one. Everything tonight is about the distilleries, more or less, that we've been speaking about tonight. I hope you enjoy it. Question one, what was the name of the first ever private industrial currency ever issued by Deanston in the 19th century? I've actually got, it's not an original one. I've got a reproduction here. I'll show you what it is as you consider this. What did they call this currency? This is when they built the village around Deanston. It was a mill. It was a cotton mill at the time. And they built a village around it for the workers. And they paid the workers in their own currency. And this is a coin here. This is a reproduction, obviously. This came with the Union bottling. And these were valid, obviously, in owned haberdasheries in grocery stores and things in the village. So they paid them in the currency that they could spend in the village. It wouldn't be allowed nowadays, but that's certainly something that happened in the 19th century. But I understand that they had the first ever industrial currency. But was it called A, Deanstons, B, drams, or C, doubloons? Were these Deanstons? Were these drams? Or were these doubloons? Fascinating story. Oh dear. People are going to be raging at me because we have started on a banana skin, I have to say. These were known as Deanstons. I know you hate me already. When I saw almost everybody suggest that they were, Gabriel Welding is just admitting I'm following the crowd, and he's answered C. Absolutely everybody has said C. Jimmy Legacy saying, I don't think you're smart enough to come up with C, Roy. So C. Drams, because dram doesn't have to be a measure of whiskey. Dram used to be just a measure. Back in the day, a dram was a measure. But drams and doubloons, I came up with both of those, Jimmy. But I have to tell you, it's Deanstons. Banana King skin to start. I'm so sorry. Question 2. Until the first road access. Fascinating question as well. Bunnahabhain was only accessible by boat. Remember, we talked about those flat-bottomed boats that would come in, which meant that they didn't need peat, which is why Bunnahabhain's unpeated. They used coal. But when was the first road built? It has road access now. But when was that road built? Was it A, 1906, B, 1936, or C, 1960? This is a tricky question, but there's a wide spread of years here. 54 years of a spread, 1906, 1936, or 1960. Fascinating to me. Stu Baby is saying, for banana's sake, 0 for 1. Spiritworks Thomas saying, I'm slipping all over the place here. Lindsay Holman is saying they should release a digital currency of the same name. Yeah, Deanstons, yeah. Kind of Bitcoin. Billy Saunders is upset as well. He's saying you get. Sorry, Billy. Eric Evanson is calling me a git and saying I fooled us. Yeah. Listen, you're getting too clever, you're getting too smart, you're getting too knowledgeable, you're getting too switched on. But all the questions, even the tricky ones, will usually, not all the time, but most of the time, will come from a perspective of maybe being able to bring something that's curious or interesting to you. Anyway, I'll tell you that anybody that answers C for this, 1960, so many of you got this. It was as recently as 1960 before Bunnahabhain was finally connected by road. Let me show you a little image of that amazing wee road. You're looking at a road here. I shared this with my patron-only lock-in on Sunday night. It was a completely different question, but it used the same image. It's about 7 or 8 feet wide, that road. It's very narrow. No, it's more than that. Oh, maybe no more than 10 feet wide. It's a very narrow road. It's about 3.5 miles long. Beautiful views off to the right as you're approaching the distillery over the Sound of Jura over to Jura there. Always forget if that's the Sound of Jura or the Sound of Islay. I think it's the Sound of Islay, actually. Anyway, if you answered C for 1960, give yourself a point. So look at question 3. Tobermory's peated expressions are branded Ledaig or Ledaig, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Ledaig. But what does it mean in English? Is it A, calm water, B, safe haven, or C, journey's end? What does Ledaig mean in English? Owen Ashford. Nice to see you, Owen. I said I'm going to call in for the night. Work in the morning. Ta-ta all. Enjoy your banana peel quiz. Thanks, Owen. Thanks for participating tonight, my friend. And I hope you pick up the rest of the questions on the replay. Hellswood is saying, you need to bring down to earth now and again. Oh, she's giving me a row. I think most people would know this, though, right? In fact, I think there used to be a electric labeling, that it actually said this. Maybe it wasn't on the label. Maybe it was on the bottle. I'm not sure. I get through a lot of Ledaig. That's the last of it. And Lindsay Holman is saying, damn it, I've read this recently. I can tell you that Ledaig in Gaelic, Scots Gaelic, is B, safe haven. It simply means safe haven. There's actually a street in Glasgow called, well, they call it Ledaig Street in Glasgow, Ledaig. But it's interesting to know that that street is called Safe Haven. It's quite cool. Question 4, which of these distilleries has always generated more power than it needs by harnessing fast-flowing water? Which of these distilleries harnesses fast-flowing water? A, Tobermory, B, Bunnahabhain, C, Deanston. Some of you are doing pretty well. Richard Agnew's on 3 out of 3 so far, doing no problem. Vicky Thompson and Tabitha Adams both on 2 out of 3, as is Che Francis. Owen G, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 for Desi Vleeland. Pete Ram. Gabriel Welding, Peter Box, Hell's Wood, Simon Ray, all on 2 out of 3. Some of you having a bit of a go at me for not doing so well, though. It's a nice rich whiskey. This Burgundy Cask Bunna. William Nambawan is saying 2 out of 3, but I followed the crowd on the last one, to be honest. And Jimmy Ledaig is saying he just watched the Food Quig Deanston distillery tour. I think I appear in that video. So I can tell you, and most of you have got this easily, they harness the power through a lathe, and originally a water wheel, but it's been upgraded more recently to turbines. The power of the River Teeth at Deanston. And they generate so much power that they actually, I think they still feed it back to the grid. Pierre is saying, Aquaviti, thanks for another session. By the way, not much of a newbie. I follow you since quite a while. Would love to see a session about whiskey clubs. I run one myself called We Dram Fife. Is that right, Pierre? If I've not realised that, have you always been Pierre Cruff? Apologies, I'm usually better at recognising names than that, but it's nice to have you around and following for such a long time. Whiskey clubs is a good topic, and there are kind of angles to bring in. Interesting, Pierre. Tell me more about your club. We Dram Fife. Does that mean you're out in Fife on the East Coast? Tell me more about it. Question 5 is a picture question. What distillery are we looking at here? This looks quite highly saturated, but I imagine that where this place is located, they get lots of good weather. But obviously I'm going to ask, what distillery are we looking at? Is it A, James Sedgwick in South Africa? Is it B, Union Distillery in Brazil? Or C, Nantou in Taiwan? I don't know if it's Nantou or Nantou. They've recently had a rebrand there. They had the Omar. I've tried that on a live stream before. They're now calling it Yushan, I think. Nantou Distillery in Taiwan. Is this James Sedgwick in South Africa, Union Distillery in Brazil, or Nantou in Taiwan? Jimmy Ledaig is saying, I do appear in the video. You record a monstrous amount of whiskey wasting. Is that where they're forced to throw what's in the glass over their shoulder or something in a wee kind of ceremony thing? Hellswood is saying, apart from Andy's name. Yeah, Alan. Yeah, I apologise for that. I hope Andy's doing well. I hope he's comfortable. Pierre is saying, not the faintest idea, but he's guessing C. But there's a theme tonight, folk. We've just had Julieann Fernandez in from Distell. Distell are a South African company. And this is the James Sedgwick distillery in South Africa, responsible for 3 ships and Baines grain whiskey. I think both of those products are made at this distillery, not sure. But this is, if anybody follows Andy Watts, the whiskey maker on Twitter and things, or have seen any videos of Andy, this is his distillery in South Africa. So if you answered A, give yourself a point. Question 6, which of these Bunnahabhain releases are currently core range? Oh, wee bit of banana skin. A, Sturacher, B, Cruavona, or C, Ciobana, or Ciobanach. depending on how you want to pronounce it. I'm sure that somebody with a better command of Gaelic than I have will be cringing as I pronounce it. A. Sturicher, B. Cruavona, and C. Kyobanach. I think the emphasis is probably on the second syllable, Kyobanach, but I'm not sure. Which of these is core range? William Numbawan is saying, yeah, good guess again. Sid is saying, I thought it was a reference to the Deanston Union bottling. God bless Distell. Simon Hulme. Looks like a new name, Simon. Nice to welcome you in, my friend. But almost everybody is thinking that Sturicher is the core range product, and I can tell you that everybody that's answered is absolutely right. Sturicher is entry level, core range, non-age statement, Bunnahabhain. Pierre is saying he's based in the sunny side of Scotland, the Kingdom of Fife, we believe. We're a truly unique whisky club. We aim for multi-sensory. Excellent, Pierre. Excellent. It's a kind of, I guess it's a shame right now you're in the same situation as the rest of us where it's tough to get together. Question 7. What will you find embossed on modern bottles of Tobermory and Ledaig or Ledaig? What would you find embossed on the glass? A. A map of Mull. B. The numbers 1798, or the year 1798, I should say. Or C. A compass. What's embossed on this bottle and this bottle? I can see it here. A map of the island of Mull, the year 1798, or a compass. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying Buna is sadistic to choose so tough names to pronounce. Absolutely, they can be tough. And only 2% of the Scots population actually speak Gaelic as their first language. It's becoming more popular. There's a Gaelic school in Glasgow. There's a college on Skye. There is a real movement to maintain it as a functioning working language. But I meet very few people that have any kind of command over it at all. I had to use the Gaelic college on Skye when I was doing the pronunciation videos a couple of years back. Precarious Davis saying banana. A is the cork, B is the bottle. Absolutely. In the glass, it says 1798. Hopefully you can see it here. But the cork has the map of Mull. Now, if you look at a map of Mull, it always makes me think of a teddy sitting down and slightly slumped. Maybe that's just the way my brain works. Almost feel silly for admitting that now, but it looks like a teddy, a slumped over teddy to me. Question 8. As well as the same owners, what else does Deanston, Bunnahabhain and Tobermory have in common? What else does these three distilleries have in common as well as being owned by Distell? A. All feature open top mash tuns. B. All were closed in 1982. C. All use Oregon pine washbacks. So is it the mash tuns? Is it the year that they all closed? Or is it the washbacks? A. Mash tuns. B. All closed in 1982. C. All using pine washbacks. Hell's Wood is saying, "You great softy." Is that for me seeing the teddy bear? Lindsay Holman is saying, "Should have paid more attention when I poured that Ledaig 10 tonight." William is saying, "I'm already glad to pronounce Bunnahabhain proper as a Dutch guy." Jimmy Legg is saying, "That is a good question." Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. It's nice to have people saying good questions rather than having a whinge about banana skins and bad questions. I wonder how long it's going to be before people start pulling out the asshat emoji. I don't think I've left any asshat questions in here tonight, but they might exist. They might be here. So I can tell you that this is a bit of a banana skin. I can tell you that all three of these distilleries were closed in 1982. Fascinating. Deanston opened again in 1990. Bunnahabhain closed just 1982, but opened maybe a year or two later. And it took Tobermory a while to get back into production as well. The 80s were a terrible time for Scotch whisky, honestly. They were all closed in 1982. Wonderful to see them thriving and in rude health today. Question 9. Ralphie voted Deanston 12 his Whisky of the Year 2020 with 89 points. But how many times has he previously reviewed it? A. Never. B. Only once, scoring at 88 points. Or C. At least twice. The big guy seems to be enjoying his Deanston right now. Or let's say the more recent Deanstons. He's admitted, I think, to not giving it 90 simply because the words natural colour didn't appear on the label. Something I was interested to know about that, actually. I was going to ask Julianne, because on the Bunnahabhain, it's got it on the label at the front. This is a tricky question. Lots of people seem to think it's B, that he's only reviewed it once before, scoring at 88 points. I can tell you that he reviewed it in 2018, scoring at 88 points. And he reviewed it in 2012, scoring at 88 points. So he's reviewed it at least twice before in the past. But he obviously feels that it's just a wee bit notch better, again, following that trend of kind of improved quality and integrity, to lift it a bit. And he's been chuffed enough with it to give it his Whisky of the Year. But he's reviewed it at least twice before in the past. Ralphie's knocking on for 900 reviews now. It's covered a lot of whisky. Question 10, which of these is true? All of Distell's malt distilleries are A, making peated and unpeated malt. B, founded in different centuries. C, currently offering a 40-year-old on their web store. Maybe a bit of an asshat question. I don't think so. I think this is interesting to me. Marku, 4 out of 9. Get this one, big guy, and you've got a pass mark. Neil Cochrane is thinking 5 out of 9. Oh, wow, this is taking some casualties, this quiz tonight. William is saying, yeah, good at guessing tonight. Going to the casino after this. How are you getting on, William? How have you done? I'm looking for the high scores. Daniel Gray, superb, 8 out of 9. Any higher than that? Shane Lay's in. Richard Agnew, both on 7, as well as Greg's Whisky Guide on 7. I'm looking for any other 8s. The chat jumps fast sometimes, my goodness. Whoa, this one's splitting the crowd as well, more than I expected. Wow, fascinating stuff. So yeah, Deanston was a cotton mill, and it was converted into a distillery in the 60s, a 20th century distillery. Yeah, we've talked about 1798 being embossed on Tobermory, so obviously an 18th century distillery. And we know that Bunnahabhain was founded in 1881, first producing in 1883, thanks to those flat-bottomed boats that I keep talking about. So that's therefore a 19th century distillery. All 3 were founded in different centuries. Am I hated tonight? Am I hated? Sid Martin has sent in a quiz. I'd already prepared the majority of the questions for this, so I didn't use any of Sid Martin's questions tonight. But Sid, I'm going to go through your quiz and tease out the questions that I like, and maybe Sunday's quiz will be heavily influenced by Sid Martin. Anybody that scores 10 out of 10 has the ability to offer questions for me to use. I might not use them copy and paste. I might kind of modify them a wee bit or use them as a bit of inspiration or something. But I do enjoy send the quiz to me for me to take the quiz first. That's what you need to do. I took Sid's quiz the other night. I opened it up and I could see that he'd put the answers in red. So I read the first question and I immediately gave the phone to my wife, and she made me sit the quiz. Or she didn't make me, but she sat there and I took that quiz that Sid sent to me. And I like doing that first because it helps me kind of test the questions a wee bit. A couple of them I had to guess, of course. We always have to do that. Okay, we're just over the 2-hour mark tonight. That's me that's kind of slowed things down. I'm feeling comfortable and I'm feeling relaxed. 219 of you still in at the bitter end. So wonderful to see so many of you turning up and being interested to hear what Julianne had to share. I thought it was fascinating tonight. I loved some of the insight. I learned a lot. I picked up a lot of information tonight. I think you all did. But it's easy when it's a brand like that we're so passionate about. We want to love it, don't we? And we're a wee bit, I suppose we can be a wee bit precious about it. We don't own it. We're just enthusiasts. But we do own the money that pays for it, right up to the point that we hand it over. So it's important to us. Desi Leland is saying, I secretly like the banana skin and ask high questions. Fantastic, Desi, I love you. That's amazing. Petehead is saying, let's put it this way, not a pass mark this time. Frank, I caught you tonight. Eric Evanson is saying 4 out of 10 shows my IQ. Nothing to do with IQ, big guy. Nothing to do with that. It's all to do with whiskey knowledge. And the more time you spend in it, the more time you pick it up. If it was me sitting taking this quiz, I'd have my trousers taken down. There's no doubt. Michael Lynn is saying 8 out of 10 double Sunday scores. There you go. It's just kind of bizarre how it can spin around. Daniel Gray saying, really good VPub tonight. Thank you, Aquaviti. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you to everybody for turning up. Elsewhere is saying, another fabulous stream. Thanks and good night. Jimmy Legacy and I have some great questions, but I'm holding them back Aquaviti. They're for a lock-in only. Good for you, Jimmy. Bruno Martins is saying, thanks again, Roy, for a lovely night with such a nice invitee. I'm really glad that worked out. Hoyt has just bought me a dram to say, great guest tonight. Thank you for the midweek break. Hoyt, you and every one of you other fabulous, wonderful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies are very, very welcome. I love doing this. I love hanging out with you all. And I'm very much looking forward to welcoming you for a more relaxed theme, structure, agenda-free Sunday evening extended opening. I hope you're not too tired of seeing me. I hope you're not too tired of whiskey content in general. You can bring along a wee comfortable Sunday night dram and join me there. I look forward to it now. I wonder how things are going to shape up once this all starts to lift and we get back to some kind of normality. I've got some ideas. Tim Allett saying, terrific stream. Thank you, Tim. Peter Box is saying, wonderful VPub. Thanks, Roy. And William Nambawan is saying, thanks for this excellent VPub today. You're welcome. Pierre is saying, great session. Please check my comments above. We'd like to hear from you. Pierre, if you want to reach out to me, send me a wee email at whisky@aquavite.com. Now that I'm all caught up, and I'm going to really, really try to keep caught up as well. But it is quite difficult just now. But that doesn't mean don't reach out, don't get in touch. Please don't stop sending your messages. I love getting the messages and emails. I often find myself asking for your patience, though. I'm going to raise this very last sip of this delicious Bunnahabhain Burgundy cask to all of you, and thank you all for hanging out on another Thursday night's VPub. I've had an absolute lovely time tonight, found it wonderfully informative, and I hope you guys did too. Looking forward to seeing you all on Sunday. In the meantime, Sláinte mhath.